Welcome to episode 7 of Marathon Talk, powered by Abbott World Marathon Majors. On this week's show, it is almost Christmas. Deena and I are together recording the show just before Christmas. And we thought we would have a very informal and fun catch-up all around reviewing and reflecting 2022, and perhaps how to use that review and reflection exercise to help you plan for 2023. So, Deena, as we sit here, less than a week to Christmas, how is planning going in your house?
It's fantastic. We have wrapped up Christmas at home and we are now on the road on a road trip in Arizona to visit a friend and my first professional coach, Joe Vigil. And then we'll make our way back to California to spend Christmas with my side of the family and then back home for New Year's. So it's been a whirlwind, to say the least.
Wow. So when this show goes out, people listening will have actually experience their Christmas, so you'll be back home again.
I know. There's no place like home, right? Being cozy at home.
Yeah, we're here at Christmas and we've just had this very, very cold snap in the UK. I think we mentioned it last time, didn't we?
Indeed.
Because you were out shoveling about 300 feet of snow and we'd had a millimetre of ice and the country had come to a standstill.
Yeah, it was a crazy week. I feel like globally there was snow in obscure places, but here we went on a road trip to Arizona. I thought it would be so warm here. I went out to get in my Christmas tree challenge this morning and I was like, good Lord, I needed a jacket on this trip. I was so cold. I went from a ski town to Arizona and it was the coldest I've been in a long time.
Is it cold the way you are at the moment then?
It's cold. It was below 40
like
degrees.
15 degrees or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's cold.
Freezing. Well, it's been cold for us here. It's been about -6.
Has it really?
Which is cold for us. Yeah, it's made running a little bit chilly, but nonetheless, enjoyed it. And I always run over Christmas. Are you a Christmas runner on Christmas Day?
I do love to get out. I just feel like there's a joy in the air and there's people out walking and running and it just feels like a festive day to get out there. But what's a good winter tip? Do you have a good winter tip for running? Because some people don't get out when it's cold.
Well, I find holidays sometimes a bit traumatic in the sense that there's a lot going on. For some people, the holiday it's quiet, isn't it? And, maybe they don't have friends or family or like people they go and see and their jobs, they have some holiday time and it's very quiet. But for us with 3 small children, it's very busy. They're off school. We collided into the end of school and all of their commitments that involves. And then they're off on holiday and they have a few wild days. I think my one tip would be, it sounds a bit cheesy really, but I think it's to be more kind to yourself. Sometimes we place such a huge emphasis on things having to be right and having to be a certain way. And we forget to just kick back and, run if you can and don't feel guilty if you can't. And, the run that you do should be enjoyable over Christmas. Of course, recording now, people have already done this because they'll have done their run. So maybe it's the kind of after Christmas and in between New Year and leading up to that period. Do you run? I always like to run then.
Yeah, but there's a lot of pressure for holidays and there's even a lot of pressure for the new year, right? We're supposed to make these resolutions to be more perfect in some way. And I just think this time of year has a lot of pressure associated. You were talking about a quiet Christmas. If anyone out there had a quiet Christmas, I am envious. Yeah. I would love a quiet Christmas.
Hey, well, maybe then resolutions, because it's a little bit related to what we're talking about, particularly around reviewing, because when you review and reflect on something, sometimes it can cause you to think in real detail about how you're going to set up the future. And we're going to do a little bit of that in today's show, but I'm not sure I want to call it a resolution. So is setting yourself a New Year resolution, is that something that you do? Has that been a part of your running or personally?
But I think resolutions are important when we have a fresh start. Some people might start something new on a Monday, but this is a good time of year to reflect on how January 1st, you're going to try to be better at something. It could be quieting yourself or saying no gracefully, more gracefully to people so that you can limit your calendar. It could be in any direction that you want, but you can't resolve to be better if you don't reflect on the year that you just put together. And that's looking at the highs and the lows and being better because of both of them.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about, like even the term being better, sometimes I feel like where particularly people who run or have the performance orientated mindset all the time, like better sometimes becomes an obsession, right? And that can sometimes become an unhealthy obsession in some ways, and sometimes your best is enough, whether it's better. So I think we must carefully define better, and we'll do that in running terms as we go through. It's like better doesn't need to be more. It doesn't need to be harder. It doesn't need to be at the detriment of relationships. You've got to define better carefully.
Absolutely, because I would venture to say that majority of runners need to do better at recovering on recovery days, like taking it easier on their recovery days so that their harder effort days, they could be recovered and go at them with a more recovered body, a sharper mindset, and be able to really nail those hard workout days. But you can't do that if you're grinding every day. You need those days to reset and adapt and rest.
So normally on the show, we would have sections of the episode where we bring you different parts, we bring you some news, and we perhaps bring you an interview. And we're not going to do that today. Instead, we're going to focus on some specific content around reviewing the year and preparing for the next year. So it's kind of like it's going to be a bigger, extended talk around your training with just Deena and myself. So grab yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a beer, whatever it is you might want to sit down with or I was going to say run with, but you're not going to run with tea, coffee or a beer. And just enjoy 30 minutes of conversation, and hopefully we'll shed a little bit of light on how you can reflect on this year and plan for the next.
Yes, this episode is all about you, the listener. So grab that drink, but also grab a pen and paper because we're going to put you to work.
Great. So Deena, let's just think about you when you were, and cast your mind back a little bit. It's not that far yet. To when you were at peak career, and you were coming at the back of a full and busy year. Is this a process that you would do on your own, with your coach? How would you reflect on a whole year? What sort of things would you do?
Yeah, and in reflecting on the year wrapping up, it would always be inside my head. And sometimes I would go out on a run and really think it through. Like maybe some of these prompts and questions we're about to ask our listeners to ask of themselves. It's something that they just go and run with and really take that time and create the space so that they can get the right answers, the authentic answers to them. And so thinking first about what went right? What were the highlights of that year? And that would be my number one thing to reflect on, is just that boosting moment, those first things that come to mind, what I did well. And really, when I would do that, it would make me realize the importance of assessing the moment in the moment was so important. Not just shoving a race behind you because it was good or bad, but really reflecting why that race went well and why that race didn't live up to your expectations. And asking those hard questions so that you can assess that moment right. Because at the end of the year, that's going to be really important moving forward. So picking those highlights, those great moments. Maybe it was a day you ran your personal best, but maybe it was like me today. I'm doing that Christmas tree challenge that the Abbott World Marathon Majors, the Global Run Club, had set online. And this morning I thought, why did I sign up for this? It's cold outside. I didn't pack the appropriate things for this trip to get out and run this early in the morning. And we're supposed to be visiting with a friend. Yesterday was the 6th mile that I had to do. but we were on the road before the sun came up. So I hammered out 6 miles on the treadmill at 4:30 in the morning before getting in the car for 10 hours. And then woke up this morning not having the right equipment. But the point of me saying this is that when I came back in from that run, after really forcing myself to go out there, I thought, you know what? It's always a good idea to go out and do this. I felt so good when I got back from that run for having the discipline to get out. The morning wasn't perfect. I was a little stiff from the road trip. It's always the right idea. So this morning was a highlight for me, and it was just a 6-mile run from a challenge from the Global Run Club app. So it's so important to reflect in the moment on giving yourself the credit for doing these things, right? Getting out there and doing it when you're not so properly prepared.
Yeah, and that is important because so the first question that we'd like you to write down in reviewing your 2022 is, what were the highlights of your running year? Okay, so this is the first thing to think about. And Deena's raised a really important point because I would forget, right? So where you can say, think about them in the process, was there anything that you would do to record those throughout the year? So sometimes I'm thinking, okay, what were my highlights? And again, you have to think carefully about highlights because a highlight can be a personal achievement, something you're really proud of. I like to define a highlight as your success story in running, whatever that looked like. So it doesn't need to be, I ran X time. I did so many miles. Don't get yourself hooked up on outcome. Instead, think about what's been the story of my success in running in 2022 and what were the highlights that I associate with that. And it could be a run streak. It could be that you made more friends when you went running. It could be that you positioned yourself not at the front of the group and you were always striving in training, but instead, you ran at least half of all your run workouts with the people at the other end of the group, and you made new friends and made new social connections. And that's something that is a highlight. So really think about those things. How do you remember them? Because there can be quite a lot sometimes.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, because when we're thinking of highlights of the year, immediately in my mind, I'm like, my 6th star in Berlin. It summed up such a journey. But Berlin in of itself, running further back in the pack than I have in the height of my career, realizing the camaraderie that happens in the marathon, in the middle of it. When you're in the front, you're battling for those positions, but I was in it, and it felt so amazing to be a part of that marathon community and to see the support of the over 1,000 people that passed me from the start line to the finish line. That support was unmatched. It's why the marathon is such a great event. If anybody is reflecting on their year and thinking that some negative things are coming up, like, I think that's human nature. We get negative and critical of ourselves. Hold on, we'll get there. But right now, this is about what you're proud of, like things that just stand out, that you can really shake your head and give yourself a thumbs up or a pat on the back. And really anything can be involved in that. It could have been running to the park and back with your child for the first time. It could be involved in it could be a race outcome, but it has to speak to you, and really let those things bubble up and sit with it for a while, because you realize there was a lot of great things. Even if some of the negative things keep trying to surface, there's a lot of great things that happen in the span of the year. And this moment right now is about honoring those moments.
And what a lovely thing for you to say. So if we rewind, imagine yourself in your past ever reflecting like this and saying to yourself, you know what, one of my highlights was that I was passed by 1,000 people in a race. Okay. So this is something that, I believe running can really, it serves you in the different seasons of your life in different ways. And what a way for you to, you have just drawn out one of your highlights as getting passed by 1,000 people. And if I was to ask you that 15 years ago,
right.
You would go, oh, is that passed by 1,000 people? You are joking.
Right.
I want 0 people to pass me.
Right.
But 1,000 people passed you, and it's a highlight.
Yeah, because there was an interaction. It wasn't just that I was being demoralized. It was that I had interaction with a large amount of those people, hundreds of them. I actually had an interaction with, and it was really special.
Great. Right. Let's move on to our second question. So once you've set and defined the highlights, let's have a think about, so what did you do in your training and your racing that brought about those highlights, that allowed you to achieve those highlights? And for some, it might be things you did well in your training and racing, things that worked really well for you. So if your highlight was a time specific, you may have popped some specific training elements in that really contributed to your success. Something practical, something logistical, something around your physical conditioning or your nutrition. So what is it that you did in your training and racing to achieve those highlights? And what we'd like you to do is to list as many positive things as you can.
And keep asking, right? Because there's always going to be a little bit more. Did you get into bed a little earlier? Were you making sure you were resting? Did you get your nutrition down, your fluids and your nutrition on race day down better? Did you join a training group, or do you have an app on your phone that keeps you accountable? These are all things that can have a positive impact on the reason you succeeded within this year.
So I have a hunch. Okay. I have this hunch about your highlight, right? And I have a hunch that something you did to enable that to be a highlight. But if you're going to answer the question, why was that a highlight? Why were you able to articulate that as a highlight? What did you do in your training or racing, or, how did you prepare to enable that to be a highlight? Because I have this hunch about why, and we haven't had this conversation.
Right.
But I've got this feeling, I could be wrong, I'll tell you it after you've given me your reason.
Again, it comes down to community and getting out there and even having the goal of obtaining this 6-star finisher's medal. It wasn't just about the medal. It was about staying involved in the sport and really that the highlight of me being passed by so many people in the Berlin Marathon made me feel a better part of this community, is because that's why I'm in it still. It's the reason why racing is so much more fun than just going out and getting in your 6-mile run in the middle of the Arizona desert. It's because you have this interaction, and I love the enthusiasm and draw of so many people chasing something or running with a deeper purpose. And so it was really beautiful that everybody out there was on their own mission, but supportive of everybody else's. And that's the reason I'm still in it. So I love that sense of camaraderie when everybody is singly driven, but really puts their arm around everybody else around them.
And so here's one thing, and you sort of have articulated it in a similar way, but differently. So what I think, and it's just my would be my view, is that in order for you to achieve that, you've undergone a really effective mindset shift. And you have to prepare for that, don't you? Because you get your contentment and your satisfaction in different ways. And it takes time to feel the same sense of satisfaction and reward and happiness, I guess.
Yeah.
When you finish a race being passed by 1,000 people, as when you've won the race in a new national record.
Yeah. I could still feel equal gratification running 40 minutes slower than my personal best.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that takes a preparation of mindset.
Which is why this moment in the year is so critical, right? What did we do right? And how do we want to move forward? Because maybe you're at a point in your running passion that this coming year, maybe you just had a child, maybe you have a new job, maybe you're traveling more. A personal best may not be in the cards for whatever reason, or maybe your personal best is from 20 years ago and you realize your fastest days are behind you. I've had to come to those terms long ago. And so this time of reflection is important, because what's going to get you excited to get back out the door to keep pursuing this, knowing that a personal best isn't in your cards.
Yeah, and with this question, so with the what did you do in your training or racing to achieve these highlights, when you think you've got your list, just stop and ask again. So you think you've got it, just pause, maybe come back to it the following day or in another run, and write down some more things, because there's always some more things. Always ask yourself, what did I do that worked? And just keep going. And then, so once you've got that, you've got some highlights, you've got some things that you think you did in your training and racing to achieve those highlights, then you're going to start to prioritize. And so the next question is, well, let's list the top 5 success behaviors that you want to take from your highlights and what enabled them, and that you want to repeat going forward into 2023. These are the top things that you did that worked for you, and the things you want to ensure are a really valued part of your training and racing routine.
Right. So it could just be taking that list above and circling the top 5 things. I think Martin's trying to create healthy habits in our listeners, these training and racing habits. This is what it's all about. If we keep repeating them, they become habitual, and we don't even have to think about all these great steps we're taking to become stronger and wiser in our running and racing.
Yes, being wise is such an important part of reflecting and reviewing a year. And in being wise, you also have to think about the things that don't go right too, don't you?
Yeah, and I think it's important to emphasize that, to acknowledge flaws in the year or things that didn't go right. We don't have to be defined by what challenged us. We could use that to define ourselves because of those challenges and bring that knowledge forward. So this time of reflecting on what you wish went differently, or what you could do better, how you could be proactive in your training and racing, be the driver, and using those moments from the past year to grow from them. And so this is sitting down and really reflecting on what you could do better. And we don't have a word in the English language, but in Japan, there's a word kaizen, and it's the principle of unending achievement and the setting and accomplishing of ever higher goals. So, what you get to some place, and the goal doesn't have to be faster. You could just be doing something better. And so it's important to see how you could just keep achieving more in your life. It could be that you take in the scenes better in a race, or do some research ahead of time so you really know what you're passing when you're going. You're really experiencing every kilometer of that marathon because you're connected to the boroughs you're running through, or the townships you're running through. And so reflecting on how you could experience these races and training better. How could you experience the miles in a better way?
Yeah, I get thinking about all of those things that you could do differently, because a year never goes as you would expect. Sometimes races throw incredible curveballs at you, don't they? And the whole year can be, well, I wasn't expecting that year. And yet you have to look at that and pull out the highlights and think about the successes, but you also have to think about the things that just didn't go well. What were the mistakes that you made, the things that you overlooked that you wish you didn't, the curveballs that did arrive, did you crack when you thought you wouldn't, and you kind of thought you thought you'd done enough training, but yet you still, the wheels fell off at 21 miles. And as you're going through that question, which is what would you like to do differently or get better at in training and racing, really start to also write, why do you think this was? So what were some of the reasons for this? And this is the challenging bit, because so often for athletes, it's really easy to write this big, long, negative, exhaustive list of things they didn't get right, or, things they feel went badly. And before you know it, it's just this berating list of things that you don't like about how your year went. And that's not healthy. So once you've done some of the things, okay, this is what I'd like to do better. Start to think about why that took place. And it's in the asking yourself, why do I think that happened? The reality of that question is that it can get quite messy, right? So what I find with a why for this is when you ask yourself, when you ask yourself the question, what would I like to do differently? So what went wrong? And then you say, and why did that happen? Then you start to write down and really think about, and why did that happen? You need to ask yourself at least 2 more why questions. So why did that happen? And then you start to write something down, and then you think, and why did that happen? And then you'll write something down. And then finally you'll go, and why did that happen? And it's on the third why that it starts to crystallize in your own mind, and you'll go, okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's where you find the solutions, right?
Exactly.
That's where the solutions are, instead of just berating and being critical. I was even thinking, sometimes when things don't go well, it's out of our control. Like 2018 Boston Marathon, that misery march I got yanked from at mile 14, thinking like, okay, the weather was out of my control, but maybe I could have dressed differently, right? Maybe I could have been a little more prepared for that weather, wearing a plastic trash bag over my uniform for longer, or, there's some way to prepare a little better for that. It could be a flight delay that has you missing a competition, but maybe you should have given yourself a day buffer and gotten there the day prior so that it wasn't going to be possible to miss the race at all. So there's things that may seem out of your control, but if you keep asking why, you might get to a place that lets you know, oh, actually, I could have planned this a little bit better to give myself some buffer time or some temperature increase. Maybe I should have ran with a cup of coffee in 2018.
And then when you've gone through that process, let's start projecting forward just a little bit. And we're not going to spend a huge amount of time on this next bit, because it's designed to be almost a primer. We're at the end of one year, we're going into the next, and some people may like the act of setting a resolution, and other people may not. And we don't see these as resolutions, rather as targets and a way to help you structure what you might go ahead in the future and define a year. So let's think about your top priority areas for success in 2023. What would you like a successful running year in 2023 to look like for you? Do you want to run faster? Do you want to run more often? Do you want to be a more social runner? Do you want to go exploring? Do you want to have some adventures? What is your running ambition that you've yet to realize in 2023?
It's a great question, because this is what gets you excited about the new year ahead, right? Answering this question. And it doesn't have to be an earth-shattering experience, but it reminds me of this little game my daughter and I sometimes play before we go to bed. It's usually when she's procrastinating and doesn't want to go to sleep yet. She says, Mom, let's play Rose, Thorn, Bud. And we think of our rose for the day. So what went right? This is what we're asking of you listeners. What went right this year? It asks the thorn, what went wrong today? What really made you mad? Did you spill your milk at lunch, or did you lose your volleyball game? Whatever that is. So your thorn, what did you do wrong this year? And then your bud, what are you looking forward to? And that just puts your mind in a totally different mindset, right? You're now thinking forward. You're done with the past. You've learned from it, both the good and the bad. You've learned from it all. And now we're moving forward. And what are we looking forward to in 2023?
Yes. Isn't that lovely too? Like thinking about it in that way. How do I want to grow in 2023 as a runner? What would give me the most satisfaction? If you were to do this exercise at the end of 2023, you're going to be asking yourself again, what were my highlights? What am I most proud of? So how do you want to grow? Now, often when you do this as well, there can sometimes be some barriers or some obstacles, and it's healthy to just have a quick think about those. So the next question, after you've thought about what do you want a successful running year in 2023 to look like, just have a quick think about, okay, what barriers or obstacles do I see that could get in the way of me achieving that? And, it might be, okay, I've seen that being consistent in my running is really important. It's something that brings me satisfaction. But one of the things that holds me back with consistency is that I can get ill or injured quite a lot. And maybe I get ill or injured because I'm neglecting something around my self-care. So in order for me to achieve that, what help and support do I need from other people? So just have a brief think about what are the barriers and obstacles.
Yeah. And when When you realize those barriers, are there steps you can take to move them out of the way? Can you ask for that help? Not just acknowledge that you need support from your spouse or roommates to be quiet in the evening so you can get to bed early so that you can wake up early and get your run in before all your other commitments, but asking for that, right? Because we don't live in a bubble. We're social beings. We're part of families. And so it's important to ask for that help. Maybe you need help by having a partner to get out there and run with. So go to your local running club or running store and ask for that time, that support. And those meetups can be really valuable in helping you reach your running goals in the next year too.
Yeah. So once you've got a few of those priorities written down for your 2023 and how you want that successful year to look, and once you've identified, a few really positive things you did from this year that you're going to carry forward into next year, just jot down perhaps one clear action point for each of those priorities, something you're going to really take control of that will help you move towards your successful running target in 2023. And in going through this process of reflection, it will take you out of the year of running in 2022 and bring you into a real processed, focused way of thinking, carrying you forward into 2023. And we hope 2023 will be a year of realizing your running ambitions, however you choose to define them.
In each show, we'll be featuring an Abbott World Marathon Major's 6 questions with a 6-star finisher. We'll be sharing with our 6-star finishers a regular opportunity to feature on the show. And this year, in 2022, there has been a total of 8,067 6-star finishers. We want you added to that list. This episode's 6-star finisher is Enrique Aris from Argentina. And I chose him because Argentina just won the World Cup and the game was amazing. Go look at the highlights from it. Enrique got his 6-star at the 2018 Boston Marathon. It is also his most memorable major because of the snow, sleet, and cold conditions. What a heroic day that was to cross a finish line. One thing he'd wish he'd known before this journey of the Abbott 6-star Finishers Medal was that feeling he got crossing the finish line and earning that medal. It's a hard one to define, I'll agree. The most support on any major course was at New York City. He loved the fans and the people lining the course. And his fastest was in London, 3 hours and 30 minutes. Good job, Enrique.
Right, that's almost it for 2022. We are leaping into 2023. We hope you had a fantastic Christmas, that you have a fantastic new year, and that you start 2023 with real passion and excitement for what lies ahead. Deena, what lies ahead for you in 2023?
Oh, gosh. I really feel that this Global Run Club app and the Runkeeper app have really held me accountable this holiday season. And I underestimated it, how accountable it can hold me, because sometimes I have to get my daughter up on the mountain for skiing and I miss our Mammoth Track Club practices. And so I'm really going to keep up with the challenges on these apps so that I can get out there and do it. It makes me feel so much better. And really this morning I had every excuse not to fulfill my 6-mile Christmas tree challenge. I had every excuse lined up and I went out and did it anyway. And so I just really want to keep using these apps to be able to get the best out of myself. Races, I'm not sure yet, but after this episode, it'll give me time to reflect on that.
It's good to hear, though, that even you find it hard sometimes to go running.
Oh, yeah.
Because there'll be people listening that think, it's such a faff.
Well, what I'm going to do? When I get home, on the chalkboard in our mudroom, in our entryway, I'm going to write, and I thought about this morning on the run, I'm going to write in big, bold chalk letters, it's always worth it. It is. No matter what the excuses are, when you get out there, it is always worth it.
Just humor me for a moment. What's a mudroom?
A mudroom? Oh,
Yes.
it's the first room you come into the house that's tile, so that when your husband and daughter take off all their wet ski equipment and throw it all over the ground, you don't like freak out that the house is a mess and it can pool with water and it's okay. That's a mudroom.
That's great. And is that like, so I don't have a mudroom. I'd like a mudroom, but I've got like a porch. It's probably a porch. So my porch is like small, and with the 3 kids come in and it's a little tiled thing, and they come in and it's always full of wet clothes, dirty boots, dog hair, like everything all scrunched in. And every now and again, like Liz and I look at it and kind of shudder and then leave it.
Yes, but at least it's not inside the house, right? So you have it. So
kind of.
I mean, that's probably not the only thing that we have the same exact space. We just call it something different.
I'm going to call it a mudroom because it's so much better. You didn't say you were going to go and run another national record this year, but you did have an amazing stat that I wanted to get in the show just to bring in 2022 to a close. It's been pretty amazing this year.
I mean, every episode we just talk about these amazing performances, and I was trying to find it online. I finally got a hold of David Monty from Race Results Weekly to ask him how many national records were set in marathons in 2022. 47 of them. 47 national records were set, 25 men and 22 women this year. I can't imagine there was ever a better year for national records to be set in the marathon.
That's 47 different national records, like not the same person breaking it 47 times.
Right. And he even said some of these records may have been broken twice in a nation.
But by different people.
Right. Like in America. The American record in the marathon was broken by Kira D'Amato in January, and then later at the Chicago Marathon by Emily Sisson. But that's only counting as one national record being broken.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah. Amazing.
47 national records in 2022. What is 2023 going to hold for global marathon running? We will be digging straight into some of that when we're back with you in the spring of 2023. For me, Deena, I've made a little plan to run in 3 new adventurous locations in 2023. So I've got to think about things that continue. I've been running for 40 years. And so I've got to think about things that continue to inspire and motivate me. And, running faster just isn't one of those things. So then I'm like, okay, but running in new places is, but that doesn't mean just exploring locally where I live. I actually know now that I need to go and experience running in other places. So I've got one of my target adventurous locations in mind, but only one.
Only one. And do you need a team of people to support you, or does it just take planning?
Well, anyone can come.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking for a fun running trip. And if I don't have to plan it and someone else is going to plan it for me, I mean, I could hold your water at the halfway point, if that helps.
Well, I've run a lot in the mountains in the Alps and the Pyrenees, but I've never done anything really structured in that sense. So, one of the things I'd like to do is run from hut to hut in the mountains in the Alps. So connect some of the trails in the Alps and just carry stuff on my back and spend 3 or 4 days just fast packing with my pack and staying in the huts and walking and stopping for coffee and things like that and enjoying it. But I'd like to do that. Right.
And the preparation would be making sure there's food, right? You have
that's the magic thing. Yes. There's often you can book a meal and a bed somewhere. So that would be just lovely. I've not done that.
Well, you do need someone to drop you off at one point and pick you up at the other, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Liz and I need a girls' week.
Long weekend.
Yeah.
So I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that. And then I'd kind of like to pick another couple places where that I don't know and I've never been. That would be an exciting 2023.
I mean, 3's a lot. 3 adventurous trips is a lot when you just think of 12 months making up a year. So you're going to have a fun year ahead.
Yeah, Liz doesn't know this yet. So,
okay.
Shh.
Hopefully she doesn't listen to Marathon Talk.
Brilliant. Right, that's it. We hope you've had a wonderful 2022. That is it for episode 7 of Marathon Talk, powered by Abbott World Marathon Majors. We'll see you in 2023. Enjoy the run, wherever it takes you.